Hey folks, this is Guiding Arrow. Today I'd like to talk to you about the upcoming lunar eclipse on February 10th. It's a really special lunar eclipse because it occurs with the beneficial influence of Jupiter, exactly trining the Sun from Libra. Well, Jupiter's position in Libra is exactly upon the fixed star Spica, which is known as the bright pearl in the sky, the jewel. And so, if we think of the lunar eclipse as a divine marriage between the masculine sun and the feminine moon, then we can see that Jupiter represents the priest, and he's sitting on top of a beautiful ring with a large jewel. So, if you're pleased by that symbolism, then I hope we can approach this eclipse with the kind of seriousness of a wedding. You know, people cry at weddings. It's a big moment of sacrifice, of faith, of love, and at this moment, the slate is wiped clean. And when we have a lunar eclipse, that's precisely what happens, is that the light of the sun is blocked out from the moon so that the slate is wiped clean if the moon represents the mind. During that time, fated actions can occur as per the influence of the lunar nodes. So if we look at the lunar nodes, we'll see that the north node, influencing the moon in this eclipse, will be near the constellation of Ursa Major. Ursa Major was one of the oldest constellations ever spotted, and it was used by mariners navigating the high seas in order to find their way. It was the North Star, it was the North Pole. Well, it is now. But it was always north. It was a never setting infinite constellation that would never fall beneath the horizon. So for modern man, it represents that animalistic aspect of the mind because it's also pictured as the bear. The Big Dipper is pictured as Ursa Major, which means the big bear. And that bear doesn't look like a normal bear you might find in the woods. It actually has a long tail, and it's a strange sort of animal. But what's interesting is that it relates to what evolutionary biologists and paleontologists have deemed the earliest mammalian ancestor from 165 million years ago. Now, the similarities between these two constellations are quite strong. The moon, being in Leo, is a further echo of this strong animalistic energy, and it relates to the kingship of the world. It relates to the lion, who's the head of the pride. He's the king of the jungle. The lion's sign is owned by the sun, and the sun this time will be, during this lunar eclipse, will be in Aquarius. Now, Aquarius is the sign of the people, but it's also the sign of Ganymede. He is the divine water pourer. He was placed in the heavens to kind of put a spout on this spring of celestial waters. And he serves, that's his purpose. Aquarius is also know. They're a very intelligent sign. It's a sign of ancient knowledge. And so that ancient knowledge will be unlocked by the transit of the sun, and the moon will become filled up by ancient knowledge in a very faded way during this lunar eclipse. Now, with the benefit of Jupiter sitting on Spica exactly falling by degree upon the sun during this eclipse, this is a wonderful priestly renovation, a conversion process. I have amazing hope for this lunar eclipse because it prefers so much benefit. And if we examine Jupiter's exact trines, we'll see that the constellation of Orion's belt will also be affected by Jupiter's beneficial rays. And might I say that Donald Trump has his North Node and Sun in Orion's belt, so that's of huge benefit to the President of the United States. And if we look at the archetype of Orion, we'll see actually the story told within the figure himself. Orion is the warrior holding up his club and holding out the lion's pelt. Now, where do we get the lion's pelt from? We get the lion's pelt from the sign of Leo, the sign of primal kingship. Now, Orion represents the rightful leader because he slays his animalistic sense of territorialism and viciousness to be a human form of leader. And to other humans, that's beautiful. So he is like Hercules as well, who sits across him from the heavens, and they both have slayed the lion to gather its pelt and to hold it up as sort of a symbol of their strength. So Orion's benefit from Jupiter's rays means he's almost like the best man at this divine wedding. So what else can we see in this eclipse? The actual path of the lunar nodes throughout the past year has been extremely interesting, and we should consider it a very fated time in general because the lunar nodes have been passing over the poles of our galaxy, which lie at Virgo and Pisces. The South Pole is in Pisces, and the North Pole is in the constellation of Coma Berenices in Virgo. Now, with the influence of this greater axis of our galaxy, we see that the North Node and the South Node are operating on strong spiritual frequencies, wavelengths, or points of the zodiac. And with Saturn passing over the galactic center, I mean, what else do you need? What else do you need to show you that this moment is defining, is decisive, is where the hand of God is stronger than the hand of man, and we will see a marriage of might and service among the leadership, which is represented by the sun and moon. Now, I warn you that the Earth might start to seem like a dark place because of the influence of the galactic center and because of the influence of Black Moon Lilith, who represents the goddess Night. And Night, according to Hesiod, was known to have birthed spite and anger and resentment and all these horrible emotions that keep us from loving each other. And so war could break out for that reason. So the question is war inevitable? I think in some cases it is. We see with the kind of random acts of terrorism that people desire a solution to violence, and what do we do besides fight back? So the hallmark of a good leader is to cut out violence, even though it might look violent, to increase security by being a strong leader, just in the way that the lunar eclipse represents the marriage of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. It also implies a birth from that union, because ultimately the divine masculine and the divine feminine are so potent in their own polarities that any time they come together, they're going to give birth to something. So what will be birthed by this lunar eclipse? What will be birthed by this process? I think it will definitely be beautiful because we have Venus with such a close approach to Earth at this time, occurring in the sign of Aries. It's a new beginning of sorts, but in the sidereal zodiac, this is occurring all the while in the sign of Pisces. And Pisces, to the Egyptians, was the sign of the Sculptor. Now, the Sculptor was considered, his name was Ptah, and he was considered the greatest creator of all, who quietly sat back and watched as he created order in the universe. And he didn't have to use sexuality, he simply thought everything into existence. And so this is why we say Pisces, they can feel everything, and they're very sensitive, because their mind is such a potent creative force, and Pisces can be great artists for that reason. So with Venus going retrograde in the coming month, in this section of the sky, going back to the realm of the creator, Ptah, you see the reunion of Sekhmet and Ptah occurring at that time, because Sekhmet is Venus and Hathor and Ptah. So whenever Sekhmet unifies with Ptah, there is the birth of peace. There is the birth of joy and dancing. It's Venus in Pisces. It's this kind of love for love's sake. It's this Shakespearean sonnet to a beautiful woman who enchants you. And Venus will bring an impact as she turns retrograde, and this lunar eclipse occurring with the strength of Jupiter in Libra is a sort of interchange between the divine balance of Libra and the feminine chaff of wheat in the star of Spica with the divine sickle of Leo and the divine sword of Venus. In all echoes of this eclipse, we see the grain preparing to be cut. And when we think of Venus, we can also think of the Virgin. She brings strength and also bounty with her. She brings healing as well as order. So, in the end, it's all in the purpose of truth. It's all in the purpose of unveiling the greater mysteries of the universe to us. So, while I cannot pretend to know exactly how these mysteries will manifest, I see it as very symbolic, and I see it as an opportunity to renew the animalistic side of ourselves and exchange it with a more servile energy. Because Aquarius will bring in waters to this eclipse. Aquarius will fill up the mind with the waters of the celestial ocean. And, that might drive some people a little bit crazy. You have to be willing to be stable and hold your cup and pour it out slowly upon your garden. And I hope these metaphors kind of set you free of some kind of overly logical understanding of the eclipse and any sort of anxiety you might have. That's honestly my goal in doing all these videos, is to help bring calm and peace to the world and to a young audience. And so I truly hope you guys enjoy this lunar eclipse and use it as a time to let the divine spirit of synchronicity and fulfillment come into you and allow you to see with new eyes and see beyond and look from above and veer past material interests and material desires and go towards more of a spiritual enlightenment where you see yourself renewed and where you see the world has order and you see the mountains are evened out and you see the valleys are filled up and what is when they go low we go high, right? Michelle Obama. So